The latest from our daily newsletter at podnews.net. Facebook is quietly rolling out Facebook podcasts to countries outside the US. We've seen Podnews available in the iOS app here in Australia. We hear some can see their podcasts appearing in the UK as well. Our Facebook page should show a podcasts tab on iOS mobile. If you see it, we'd love to know. And no, it's not changing its name. The owning company of Facebook has changed its name to Meta. However, the Facebook app will still be called Facebook. Earlier today, the Australian Podcast Awards announced their nominations in a video that we link to today from our show notes and our newsletter. All Australian podcasts can take part in the Listener's Choice Award, as explained by a scruffy man in a cheap shirt about 22 minutes into the video. That's me. The awards will be in Sydney on the 2nd of December. Spotify Australia has signed a former Kyle and Jackie O producer Mitchell Coombs and All Right Hey to produce an exclusive show. Spotify's also added 25 new countries to its podcast chart website. The US is joined by Argentina, Australia, Austria, Brazil, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Mexico, New Zealand, Norway, the Philippines, Poland, Spain, Sweden, the Netherlands, and the UK. We link to how they work today from our show notes and our newsletter. And who is New Zealand's biggest podcast platform? Why, it's accessmedia.nz with more than 1,000 shows. And in podcast news, Angela Yee's Lip Service is an opportunity for you to join hip-hop radio star Angela Yee and her cast of good girlfriends as she talks sex, relationships and everything in between with the hottest stars in hip-hop and R&B. It's presented by Ad Large Media, and we thank them for their support this week. And Podland has an interview with Benjamin Bellamy about new podcast namespace tags, and Bailey Drake from Headliner talks about recording live audio apps and transcribing them. And that's the latest from our daily newsletter. For all the links, we're at podnews.net.
For Pod News, I'm Evo Terra with your Minute of Pod Zen. Your podcast is unique, just like every other podcast. Or just like every other podcast tries to be. The truth is, figuring out your show's unique point of view is hard. Asking these 4 questions can help. My friend, the community building powerhouse Pam Slim, uses these questions when workshopping with her business consulting customers. I find them to be excellent questions that podcasters can also use to help nail down what it is that makes their show special. So here they are with an example for each. What's missing from the conversation? Brian Barletta realized no podcast about podcasting was covering podcast ad tech, so he started Sounds Profitable to do just that, and the niche is better for it. Whose important perspective is not being shared? Greg Jorgensen realized that shows about Thailand and Bangkok were all focused on travel and of limited value to the hundreds of thousands of expats who call Bangkok home. So he created the Bangkok Podcast to serve that audience. What obvious truths are being ignored? Someone needs to make a movie/TV podcast that exposes the crappy B-grade movies and shows that Netflix foists upon us, often with incredible hype and possible algorithm manipulation to try to convince us that these shows are worth watching. They're not. And what critical steps are not being covered? The podcast about podcasting space is dominated by how-to shows aimed at beginning podcasters. We need shows for the mid-level podcaster on the verge of turning pro and making their full-time living as a podcaster. Digging deep into any of these questions will be a big help as you nail down your show's unique point of view. Ideally, you'll dig into all of them and come up with some interesting answers for each and every one. You'll find more thoughts on this topic and other questions every working podcaster should be asking themselves at podcastpontifications.com. I'm Evo Terra. This has been your Minute of Pod Zen.